people started to ask me where my name was from. I was aware that Dindi Butaji was unusual. My first name is my parents' friend's nickname, but I didn't know where my surname was from. I remember telling my friend's mum, who had asked me where my surname and dad was from, that I was aware that my dad was always very focused on watching the news when it came to the section on the war in the Middle East. Perhaps my dad was Lebanese. At this time, my brother had started high school in Sydney's eastern suburbs with a high Jewish population. My brother has dark olive skin and looks distinctly Mediterranean. Tony was told to tell people that his father's family are from Malta, a fellow Mediterranean country that no one had any political issues with. So for a time, I believed that I was half Maltese. They do very good pastizzis, and I was happy about that. One day when I was visiting my nana, where my Aunt Hala also lived, I asked Hala where they were from. She told me somewhat incredulously that they were from Palestine. I'd never heard of it. I was 14 years old when I found out where my father and his family were from. What I learned about their story was this, that my father, who was born in 1945, his parents and 3 older sisters lived a prosperous life in Jerusalem. My grandfather, Jiddo in Arabic, was a businessman and a lay reader at the Anglican Church in Nazareth. They spoke 3 languages fluently, Arabic, French and English. They had maids and an extended family who lived up in Haifa by the sea, who owned the Windsor Hotel. In their neighbourhood in West Jerusalem lived Edward Said. Edward would go on to become a renowned academic and spokesperson for Palestine. The Butaji family's doctor and friend was Jewish. Palestine was a secular society. Jews, Christians and Muslims all coexisted together in harmony. This is what my nana told me. But in May 1948, when my father was 3 years of age, soldiers with loudspeakers rolled through Jerusalem in tanks and threatened, "If you do not leave now, we will shoot you, just like we shot all the villagers from Dar es Salaam." These murdered civilians were strung up for all to see. It was no hollow threat. My nana and Jiddo grabbed their kids, a few possessions, and jumped into the car where they fled over the border into Egypt with the key to their house for their return home when the situation was safe. A few gunshots were fired at them on this journey. My auntie Randa, who's in the audience today, still has the key to their house in Jerusalem, to which they cannot return. This expulsion of Palestinians from what was to become the State of Israel is called Al-Nakba, the catastrophe. My father's family lost all their possessions, their home and business. They were separated from family and friends in the Palestinian diaspora, with relatives who fled to different parts of the globe, including New Zealand, France, Canada and England. Some family were left behind. My nana never saw her sister again, who lived in East Jerusalem, which was not immediately consumed into the State of Israel. It is a fate of geography. Of the 750,000 Palestinians who were expelled in the Nakba in 1948, many fled into Syria and Jordan, and within Palestine into East Jerusalem and the West Bank and Gaza. East Jerusalem and west of the Jordan River, the West Bank, were initially under the protection of neighbouring countries, but since 1967 they have become the occupied Palestinian territories, where they live under military occupation without any civic rights. Today, 76 years later, these Nakba descendants number almost 6 million people around the world, most registered as refugees, living in camps without freedom or hope for a better future. They are stateless. Nearly 900,000 of them are in the West Bank, and 1.7 million are in Gaza, roughly 80% of its population. And I don't need to tell you what's happening in Gaza today, but what I do just want to comment on is that I work in the environmental sector, and just the environmental destruction and carbon emissions from Israel's relentless bombardment, in addition to the physical and emotional trauma being inflicted, is just unfathomable to me, and I just don't know how they get away with it. My dad's family were lucky to arrive on the shores in Australia in January 1950. They came on a ship called the Toscana on a 6-week journey from Egypt to Fremantle and then on to Sydney. They came in under the White Australia policy, sponsored by the Anglican Church and my grandfather's brother, who ran a guest house at Cremorne Point in Sydney. Once in Australia, my dad's family ran a corner shop on Balmoral Beach in Mossman. How lucky to end up in Sydney's harbour foreshore of all places. But I know that life was hard for them. The whole family worked 7 days a week to make ends meet, and my dad would remind me of that when I was growing up. The whole family, my nana made sandwiches for Queenwood School, and they sold ice creams, milk and bread. My nana was an excellent cook, so I'm sure that her catered sandwiches would have been delicious. And I actually have a photo of my nana over there. You can check it afterwards. My dad's family faced racism. It was Australia, 1950s. My nana was told that in Australia, one did not grow vegetables in their front garden. And my poor father changed his name from Seraphim. He was being teased at school. They called him Silly instead of Seri, which is short for Seraphim. My dad's name was changed to John, an anglicised version of his middle name. The Butagis just wanted to fit in. They switched from speaking English exclusively. My dad no longer speaks Arabic. They hid where they were from. My Shifto wrote countless letters to authorities asking for compensation for all that they had lost to the State of Israel, but to no avail. He continued as a lay reader for the Anglican Sydney Diocese and later became an ordained deacon. He would refer to his beloved country of Palestine in the context of where Jesus came from in his sermons. One day, Gito received a letter from the Anglican Church to say that he was not to mention Palestine ever again in his talks. Later that day, he had a heart attack and died of a broken heart in 1960.